Call to order, please. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 10th, 2018 Hillsborough Township Planning Board meeting. This meeting has been duly advertised according to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, Sunshine Law. Roll call, please.
Ms. Pecorino is absent. Ms. Forrest?
Here.
Mr. Hestag?
Here.
Mr. Wagner?
Here.
Mr. Scobah?
Here.
Mr. Weinstein?
Here.
Vice Chair Julian?
Here.
Chair LaPlante?
Here. First order of business is definition of minutes, which there are none. We have two resolutions. First will be US 206 Hillsborough Self-Storage LLC, File 05 PB 24 SRV. It's in a file for a 2018 extension request. The copy of To Refresh Your Memory is in your packet. We'll enter a motion for approval on that.
The eligible members, Mr. Chairman, are yourself, Mr. Julian, Mr. Wagner, Ms. Forrest, Mr. Scobo, and Mr. Weinstein.
I'll make
Thank
the
you.
motion. Move.
Thank you, Ron. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll take a roll call, please.
Mr. Keeson is absent. Mel Core is absent. Ms. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Scobah?
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein?
Yes.
Chair LaPlante?
Yes.
I think I get a vote too.
Mr. Julian?
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Julian. All right, second would be Dr. Joseph Martin's File 17 PB 15 SV. Again, another copy is in your packet.
Same group.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call?
Mr. Keeson is absent. Mr. Del Core is absent. Ms. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Scobah?
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair LaPlante?
Yes. Thank you. There's no planning board business, no special committee reports. Is there any business from the floor that is not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none. We will go to consideration of ordinance 2018-05, Town Center Ordinance Review. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Township Committee on April 24th introduced an ordinance that would introduce the amendments to the Town Center District. And just for your orientation, I have a map of the Town Center District on the wall, 206 running down the center, Amwell Road running east-west in the middle. This ordinance does not change the boundary in any way, shape, or form. It has to do with certain uses within the zone, which I will go over for you. Simply put, the ordinance would add single-use multifamily dwelling buildings to the permitted uses and conditional uses in the Town Center District. Apartments are permitted uses right now in the zone. This does not add a new use. It's just that they are only permitted on the upper floors of mixed-use buildings. This would allow them to be constructed as part of a mixed-use development, but in a single-use building. So the thing to remember here is that you would not be getting an apartment complex type development with no retail. It would still have to be part of a mixed-use development. There's two main components to the ordinance. The first adds a single-use multifamily building as a permitted conditional use in existing shopping centers as defined in the Town Center District. They would apply to, in this case, the two existing shopping centers south of Amwell Road and east of 206. Pointing at Nelson's Corner, just below that is what was the former Stop and Shop shopping center. So in those two cases, a single-use multifamily building would be permitted, but you could not reduce the commercial space to anything less than 86,000 square feet. So it still requires it to be a commercial district, or a commercial development. The second component creates a mixed-use inclusionary overlay district on 8 adjoining lots fronting on southbound Route 206, totaling 8.8 acres. It's these lots right here. This larger lot right next to the T, that's the Bottle King, for your orientation. And it's these lots to the south of the Bottle King, which would be combined into an 8.8 acre parcel. So that would become an overlay district, which again would allow single-use multifamily buildings, but only as part of a larger mixed-use development. So in terms of consistency with the master plan, and I'm referring to my memo that I've sent to the board dated April 25th, both, in my opinion at least, and it's up to the board whether or not they concur, are consistent with the stated purposes of both the Town Center Master Plan and the existing Town Center District Ordinance, which is a mixed-use, well-designed, compact, traditional neighborhood integrating land uses with close proximity to each other and providing for the daily recreational and shopping needs of township residents. These amendments would not change either of those purposes. As noted before, this ordinance does not add an otherwise prohibited use, in this case lofts or apartments, but rather allows a degree of flexibility in terms of how a permitted use are integrated into the site. All current town center design requirements would still apply, so that's still in place. Of particular note, single-use residential buildings would be prohibited from fronting on Route 206, so we'd still be maintaining our main street wall in either of these developments. And as a plus, if you will, in terms of the existing shopping centers, this would allow them to become mixed-use developments rather than single-use retail developments. This is before the board tonight for your comments, for changes or no changes, modifications as you see fit, and whether or not you agree with the consistency to the master plan.
David, could you explain, it's on the charts here, but maybe for the record, is the maximum amount of units that could be built and/or what
Yes,
the percentage is?
Yes, I did forget to mention that these are affordable housing. It would be an affordable housing component to whatever development takes place under these amendments. In the overlay district, the maximum total dwelling units would be 191. The minimum affordable units of that total would be 46. The conditional use would allow a building up to 44 units total, 11 of which would, minimum of 11 would have to be affordable units. There's a minimum retail component to both as well. In the overlay district, the minimum retail square feet would be 28,000 square feet. In the shopping center, to be a minimum of 86,000 square feet of retail.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I remember years ago, there was like an architectural subcommittee. I remember we started like talking about it. I mean, is there any consideration for any architectural type of designs or, I know the town center was something that we were working on years and years and years ago.
Yeah, these amendments do not change the current design requirements in the town center zone or the ASDO, the Architectural Site Development Overlay.
Okay.
So the architectural requirements you're talking about are still in place. They don't get changed.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Did you say that, like, the Stop and Shop shopping center, is the requirement for commercial property or square footage the same as exists today?
There'd be a minimum, for a start, for a property to qualify, they'd have to be at present no less than 90,000 square feet. As a result of adding a single-use multifamily building, they'd be allowed to reduce it somewhat, but no less than 86,000 square feet.
Okay, so
So you
that's...
still have to
that's not
maintain
much.
86,000. In other words, we don't want it to become basically a residential development. They still have to be primarily a commercial
Yeah, that's not
development.
much of a reduction, so that sounds pretty good.
No. It allows some modifications to some of the buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we have maybe a motion to open to public. We have a
So
motion?
moved.
Thank you, Stephanie. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, is there any questions or comments from the floor based on this introduction of the TC ordinance that we just talked about?
Planning board comment.
Planning board comment, I'm sorry. Okay. Seeing none. Motion to close public.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we have a motion, I guess, to send this back to the Township Committee as is with no amendments.
Correct.
Right? We have a motion for that.
Make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Scobo. Second?
Second.
Stephanie, thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Scobah?
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair LaFawn?
Yes. Okay, so we'll now move to the public hearing. Apex Land Associates LLC, Apex Sports and Events, File 18 PB 01 MSP, Block 175, Lot 23.01, formerly portion of Block 177, Lot 23.01, Mountain View Road. Applicant is seeking preliminary and final major site plan approval, submission waiver for submitting a CIS, a tree mitigation waiver, to construct a 209,795 square foot indoor athletic and recreation facility comprised of 3 connecting building components, 100,850 square foot hard shell main building, 86,400 square foot air-supported dome easterly structure, a 22,545 square foot air-supported structure to the rear of the property, 3 outdoor synthetic fields, parking, and associated stormwater on a property governed in the provisions of the BELLE GSA redevelopment plan and amended ordinance 2017-21, excuse me, EC review of 03-26 of 18, revised plans received 4/23 of 18, and this is continued from May 3rd, 2018 without further notice. Mr. Fisher.
Mr. Chairman, before Mr. Fisher enters his appearance, I want to put on the record that we received certifications by absent board members of examination of record and eligibility to vote. We have received same from Ms. Forrest, Mr. Julian, and Mr. Weinstein regarding the May 3rd, 2008 video recording. We have equally received the same on a video recording as to April the 5th, 2018 from Mr. Weinstein, which makes Ms. Forrest, Mr. Weinstein, and Vice Chairman Julian eligible to participate and vote on this matter.
Thank you, Counselor. And Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Alex Fisher from Savo, Shaw, Gillespie, Grodnick, and Fisher in Somerville. We're returning for a continuation of the hearing on this application that began on April 5th, 2018, and had a second hearing on May 3rd, 2018. At those meetings, you heard from Greg Wilkie, civil engineer, Tom Decker, LSRP, Jim Llewellyn, operations specialist,
There you go.
Eric Sullivan, traffic engineer Gary Dean, and planner Frank Banish. Initially, tonight, I'll be calling up a different operations specialist, Steve Goris, to briefly clarify facility hours. Unfortunately, Mr. Sullivan was not available tonight, but Mr. Goris is similarly qualified, has attended all meetings, and is able to offer testimony. Finally, I'll have Phil Clark, the project architect, provide architectural and signage testimony. I'd also like to clarify an issue because there was some confusion at the prior meeting about what zero light spillage means. Zero light spillage does not mean that a person would not be able to ever see the point of light. It means that there is no illumination from light off-site. So, in other words, a person might be able to notice a porch light down the street, but that doesn't mean it's illuminating their property. So the sections 11F and D of the BELLE GSA redevelopment plan require lighting design to IESNA standards, and you heard testimony that it matches that, and to avoid off-site spillage where possible, and the engineering testimony also showed zero off-site spillage towards residential areas. So the lighting plan and testimony showed the applicant met that requirement with 0 foot candles at the property line. So with that, I'd like to have Mr. Goris sworn.
Absolutely. Should be on.
It's Steve, S-T-E-V-E, Goris, G-O-R-I-S.
Mr. Goris, could you give the board the benefit of your current position?
I'm the Vice President of Sports Facilities Management.
And in that position, you work closely with Mr. Sullivan?
Yes, sir, directly for Mr. Sullivan.
And you've overseen the development of several facilities domestically, internationally, similar to this?
Yes, sir.
How many would you say? About a dozen?
Yeah, a couple dozen, probably.
And you currently oversee the operations of similar venues across the country?
16 of them.
And you've testified numerous times before boards regarding facility operations?
Yes, I have.
And you are a certified arena operator, same as Mr. Sullivan?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to have the board accept Mr. Goris's qualifications as an expert in the field of operations of
We'll
indoor
accept
outdoor.
those qualifications, Mr. Fisher.
All right. And Mr. Goris, you've attended both prior meetings, correct?
That is correct.
And you've been involved with this project since the beginning?
Yes, sir.
Now, at the last meeting, Mr. Sullivan stated the standard operating hours for the facility are 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., right?
That is correct.
And there's no change to that for outdoor. It's always ends at 11. Lights are shut off for the outdoor fields, right?
That is correct.
But there are some occasional indoor leagues or requests, if you could explain that, where they may ask to go past 11?
Yeah, I think there's some exceptions on the indoor side that we see happen. Occasionally, we get asked to run like a second shift league for first responders, medical personnel, hospitality. So we'd like to be able to do that in the evenings when that is called upon. And then there's also times where we've been requested to do special events for communities, things like the high school wants to do an after prom at the facility, for example, or a lock-in for a Girl Scouts group or Boy Scouts group, all contained within the facility. They're an anomaly to our regular operations, but we do get asked, and they are kind of common in these facilities.
Bless you.
And that will be indoors only?
Indoors only, correct.
And you can confirm that the lights will be turned off on the outside by 11 p.m. no matter what?
Yeah, the field lights turned off at 11 by 11 p.m.
Mr. Fisher, can you keep the microphone a little closer? Because you tend to
Even
look down when
closer.
you talk, so it gets
Yeah.
away from the mic.
I've heard this before.
I know, we'll work on it.
I say every time I'll work on it, never gets better. And you can confirm, as was testified to before by Mr. Sullivan, that there is no light emitted from the dome itself, correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
And the parking lots, you've heard testimony that there's 0 foot candle spillage from the parking lot lights, correct?
That is correct.
So from your point of view, there's no impact from having limited indoor activity on an occasional basis past 11 p.m.?
That is correct.
Okay, that's all for Mr. Goris.
Couple questions. So the outside hours of operation are 8 to 11, you said, correct? 8 a.m. to 11 p.m.?
That is correct.
And I think we did hear testimony prior that if a field was not in use, though, that the lights would be turned out regardless of what time it was.
That is correct. That's a operational standard, just from a cost savings perspective.
Correct. Now, I didn't hear, though, what the hours of the inside operation would be.
So they basically do mirror 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. That's the standard time. That's what we were just saying. There is times where we've been asked to go later than that, depending on the type of event, but special events only. So these second shift leagues or these community events like after proms, et cetera, that could go later.
How late?
They vary. The leagues usually will be done by 2 a.m. And after prom, depending on the school's limitations and stuff, could go later. But they do not allow kids to leave in the middle. So once they're in for the event, typically they're
Later
in.
than 2 a.m.?
It varies from municipality to municipality.
And that, of course, is the board's prerogative to talk about hours. There was some testimony last time about buses coming. And if I'm not mistaken, the testimony was that there is no provision on site for bus parking. The buses would just go away. Can you talk about that a little bit more? The buses just don't go away. Where would they go? And how often do you get buses on the site based on your other facilities?
Yeah, I could probably speak to that better. Most of the events that happen at these facilities are youth and amateur events, not school-related. Most often they are kind of club sports or travel team sports. Most of the drop-off for that happens with parents. So it's parents coming in with kids or siblings. It's not so much, charter buses of kids coming in like you would see at a high school or collegiate type event. So it's very, very seldom that we'll see like a big charter bus coming into the facility. If anything, we'll see like 15 passenger vans or something like that if a team does decide to travel together. I don't know if I can speak to where exactly they would go, but we do have facilities that don't have capacity to have bus parking on site. We have to tell the charter that is the case before they come, and then they have to make arrangements on where that bus is going to go while the kids are in and playing. So we can help facilitate that, but typically they're kind of used to that environment, and they make those arrangements.
And roughly, how often would you expect the charter buses to be on site? I mean, when you say it's not often, but once a year, twice a year, 2 buses, 3 buses?
Yeah, if I saw 6 buses, like full charter buses in a course of a year, that'd be a lot for one of our facilities.
Okay, but you have no way of accommodating them on site? I mean, just setting them off down 206 or somewhere on their own to find some place to park for a couple hours doesn't sound like a good situation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would depend. If there's parking spots available on site, we could certainly accommodate a bus on site. If there isn't, and we know that it's going to be full because of the capacity of the building, then we would not allow them to park on site because just of the limitations of that parking.
If you have a bus full of people, there would be a commensurate reduction in cars, right?
Absolutely.
That's it.
I'll ask 2 things. So from the bus standpoint, if someone was going to drop off, I would imagine those kids would be there for a duration of the day, so 6 or 7 hours, right? So depending on where they could, a bus isn't really going to be on the clock, so it probably would leave and maybe come back, because I think you said you're pulling from 2 hours away or an hour away, most times.
I mean, for tournament play, something that would be bus late, it's a 6-hour drive time. It's kind of the pull that we see for these type of facilities. Most of our traffic comes within that 30 to 40-minute drive time and less.
And I'll ask a question just to follow up on the nighttime leagues that you're considering. Is this like a 1 or 2 week type deal, or a 6 to 7 week type deal, or?
Yeah, our leagues usually run 8 weeks. So it'll be an 8-week session, 8 games per team, and then finish with the playoff at that 8th week.
Okay. And you don't necessarily have any plans to do that now? This is just if it comes up?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
Do you typically get in town or out town, outside town, like these leagues or tournaments? Is there, how does that work?
Yeah, so we look at all the facilities as a radius of influence around those facilities. I think Mr. Sullivan testified last week as well. League play, we always say that the average participant will travel a third of their average stay to stay at the facility, to come play at the facility. So if you're coming to play in a league game and it's an hour-long league, you show up 15 minutes prior to the game to warm up, stay 15 minutes after. So most people will travel half an hour for that experience. So from a half an hour in is typically where we see most of our league and clinic camp, hour-and-a-half type programming take place. When we get to the longer, like a tournament where someone might come stay for 6-7 hours or multiple days, which really is what we want, right, to help drive some of that economic impact to the market, we'll see that drive time go out to up to 6 hours, more regional type programming.
Right.
You're welcome.
And I know talking about the prom, so like say project graduation or something you were talking about, where the kids go and get locked down and not be released till next morning or whatever. And they're usually dropped off by parents or buses, and then that's it for the night.
Yeah, and that's the only thing that's typically allowed to happen in the building while those things are happening, is just from a child safety perspective, we can't have other activities going on. So typically they would, for example, go to prom, after prom, come straight to the facility, and then they are locked in and chaperoned usually by the school staff, as well as our security staff, and have to stay throughout the night until the morning time when they are released. That's how they typically operate. Now, we haven't actually engaged in conversations about hosting those yet. We just wanted to make sure that you knew that we get asked to host those. I think it's a good service to the community, but we just wanted to make sure that we are clear on that.
Okay. Anyone else? Motion to open to public?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so any questions from public on Mr. Garrett? Goris's testimony? Okay, I don't see anybody, so unless there's anything else, we'll take your next witness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to have Phil Clark come up. Do you have some boards you want to set up beforehand? Might as well get those set up and then.
Let's
so they're
swear
ready to
him in
go.
first.
Yeah, let's do that.
Hold the mic. Hold him.
You swear to testify to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you state and spell your name? Can you state and spell your name for me?
Philip Clark, 1L, no E.
All right. Should I just qualify him?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, grab the mic. Mr. Clark, you are a licensed architect, correct?
Correct.
Could you provide the states that you're licensed in?
Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, North Carolina.
And if you could provide the board with your background of your firm and your specialties?
Yes, I'm with Claris Construction, one of the principals. Our home office is Newtown, Connecticut, and our branch offices are Hartford, Connecticut, and Charlotte, North Carolina. We are a design-build firm with architects, engineers, and contractors in the firm. We do specialize in recreational facilities, having completed 21 projects in the 26 years that we've been established.
And all of those designs have been successful?
Yes.
And you provided architectural testimony before boards and commissions on these similar projects?
Yes.
About over 100 times?
Yes.
I would ask that the board accept his qualifications as an expert in the field of architecture with expertise also in the design of sports, recreation, indoor and outdoor complexes.
We'll accept his qualifications. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if you want to set up your exhibits, Mr. Clark.
You can take that other board down. Thanks.
What number are we up to? Hey, what?
I believe you're going to start at Exhibit A-9. And we'll have you describe each of those exhibits when you refer to them for the record.
Good evening. Exhibit A-9 is a architectural rendering, 3D rendering of the facility, and Exhibit A-10 is a colored elevations of the facility.
Why don't you go ahead and describe the architecture?
Thank you. Again, we're a design-build firm, and we're partnering on this project with Fenton Construction out of Warren, New Jersey. We'll be the on-site general contractor. The project is basically...
Could you just speak a bit louder?
I'm sorry.
It's
Yeah.
on just...
Thanks. So I'd like to speak tonight about the architecture of the project, and how it addresses your 2008 redevelopment plan, as well as Mr. Maskey's comments from his memorandum of March 15th, 2018. Again, Exhibit A9 is an architectural rendering. Concern in your redesign documents is something called massing, and I'd like to start with that. So building massing, really, in simplest form, this thing could be a simple box, and ideally, in a perfect world, everything fits nicely, and it's a very high, ugly box. And so our job as architects is obviously to meet your requirements, but also make this thing look fantastic. One of the things we started with was, as you can see from these elevations, the west and the east elevations.
Can you identify the exhibit, please?
A10. Exhibit A10 shows the elevations. We've dropped the lines of the roof lines on the east and west elevations to create, back to Exhibit A9, to create a second level, a lower level roof. That gives the impression of a smaller building. It also creates some nice horizontal lines, which is also in your regulations. We also took the basic box, which back to A10, Exhibit A10, is this area from here to here, and it's a gabled end, two-sided structure. So we said, what can we do to the front to make this thing pop? Back to A9, Exhibit A9, we took a different mass, a different box with a single slope and put that onto the front of the structure, and it did two things. Functionality, it created a large high spot for us to have for the operations to have their climbing operation functions in this area. So it was functional, but also it took a plain vanilla two-sloped roof, following the same roof line. We kind of just extended it and gave it kind of a wow factor. We also said, okay, we need to, for the entrance and the administration area, what can we do there? So we took a cube, which is, as you can see, is all glass. I'm still on Exhibit A9. We pulled that out from the large structure at a lower plane, and with the glass, again, it serves as a function as well, because this is administrative, the main entrance, reception, conference rooms, etc., and that really requires glass in those areas for natural lighting. So kind of serve two functions. It also, we change, and I'll talk about textures and product in a minute, materials in a minute, but by having glass there, it kind of brings your eye towards that entrance. It's very important, and I'll explain that in a minute too. So the actual entrance, we drew back, recessed it, another requirement of your regs, and so we cut the box up a little at the very entrance. And I'll talk about the entrance also in a minute. So again, we dropped the elevations. We created a horizontal line in the stucco, also to create the impression to lower the facility. Again, part of your regulations. If I can add a couple exhibits for a minute, I'll get to the products and the texture.
This next one would be Exhibit A11. And is it? And that would be Exhibit A12, if you want to put stickers on them. That's A13. Not sure we're going to pass that one around.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Defend your file. We're going to have a scan.
Yes.
So we've talked about massing and how we got to the roof lines and some horizontal lines and features to break up what was a very basic, dull volume structure. What we're proposing for the skin of the building is a warm palette of gray and light gray, which will tie into the white domes. We're proposing stucco on the walls, and then we have a wainscot of that of Exhibit A13, which is a split face block, also suggested in your your regulations, and that would be on the five block high on the bottom. That, again, serves as functionality and aesthetics. We gain another horizontal line, but we also, there's a lot of landscaping in these areas where we have it, and it's good to have something more durable down there for landscaping and when people are watering, weeding, etc. So it's a protective measure as well. It also gives it like a dramatic a color that we bring around the band, and then we pop it at the entrance. It actually spans the entire height of the front entrance. So that's split face block and of that color. Again, the rest of the palette is a gray. We have what we're proposing for functionality and for aesthetics, again, is this sandwich panel, which is Exhibit A11. This panel, this is the inside. This is what you'll see from the inside of the building. It's a metal structure face, and it's for durability. If you've been in sports facilities before where they just have the vinyl insulation, it's ripped and torn after a brief time. So this will protect the skin of the building. And then why we call it a sandwich panel is because on the inside we have a certain number of inches of foam insulation. The thickness of it is dependent on the energy code, and it could be anywhere from 2.5 to 4 inches. The outside has another metal panel for durability, but then we apply a stucco embossed face. We use this on other recreation facilities. It's absolutely beautiful, and it gets the job done that I need done, which is durability and aesthetics. So this is the panel we're proposing for the two sides, the south and the west. I'm back to Exhibit A9. The south and the west. On the north, the east, those two sides are hidden by the bubbles, and we have the same panel with the metal on the inside, metal on the out, but we're not showing the stucco on the outside on the two hidden sides. They will be the same color, but it'll be a flatter, sleeker panel. So we've talked about back to A9, Exhibit A9, the panels. Then we go from a light gray to a dark gray at the higher point of the building. And we just feel that we needed to do something on these two corners to dress it up. These are also stucco. It's a different type of stucco. A14, I got it. These are the actual two colors we're proposing. And it's cool shell gray and cool igloo white. Again, this darker gray would be in the corners. The lighter gray would be the mass body of the structure. This stucco, it's a softer, more granular stucco finish than this one, just because we wanted to break it up a little. No other reason, but we think it's just adding another texture. And speaking of textures, then we go to the bubble, the glass bubble, and it's all just, a clear glass. We might go with a light gray reflecticity if we need to for the energy code, but we haven't run that yet, but we're proposing probably clear glass. Then we have the stainless steel, or aluminum, frames around the glass. That's the products that we're proposing for the building, and we believe it nicely meets your redevelopment plan. One statement in your redevelopment plan is they're emphatic that this does not look like what they're calling a Butler building with corrugated, horizontal, ugly, like you see in a distribution center. And that's another reason we're suggesting this type of panel. We're confident this no way looks like a a typical Butler building. It is a Butler structure. It has a pre-engineered, what we call Butler superstructure, the steel inside and the roof. But the facade, I would challenge anyone to tell me that they could tell that's inside is a pre-engineered building. So, but I wanted to bring that up. The entry, which I touched on, we recess it, which is, again, part of the regs, part of your regulations. And we also made a dark brick block, split place block, identical to what we're wrapping the building with. Why we did that was we're trying to announce that entrance. We're trying to say it's a large building. Here's the main entrance. It's important for operations. It's important that they funnel everybody through that main entrance. So we want to make sure there's no doubt where that entrance is. We also finished it up with a curved canopy. Again, it's functional and aesthetically pleasing to us. Kids can stand there while it's raining, waiting for their parents, but also it's got a nice curve to it where nothing else in the main building has a curve. It's all straight lines and sharp edges. This thing kind of, we think, ties in the two bubbles, which obviously are curved. Also at the entrance, we have brick pavers, part of your requirements, and we have landscaping on both sides. On top of the arc, the canopy is one of our signs, and I'd like to segue into the signs. So I unfortunately have to get some more exhibits.
Before you go into signs, I just wanted to ask two questions.
Louder.
The mechanical equipment will be completely screened from view?
All visible there will be no visible HVAC equipment, and I was going to discuss that.
Oh, you're going to discuss it later? Okay.
Yeah, but that's,
And the heights, are you planning to?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll
Yep.
move on to
All right.
signage then.
I'm sorry, I'm jumping out of.
Mr. White, do you have any questions on anything that's come so far?
Kind of like to know a little more about the bubble, the material it's made out of,
Okay,
so that we don't get the glowing effect.
okay. I don't know if you're coming to that later, or, okay, go ahead.
It's a 3-ply vinyl bubble, so it's really as insulated as a bubble can be for energy efficiency. It does not glow. All the lights are down. What was the exact question?
I believe Mr. Sullivan testified in the 16 other facilities that they have, it does not glow or emit light. It's opaque, triple opaque.
Would, since Mr. White asked the question of the bubble, what is the ability to withstand heavy snowfalls and/or storms, and also if there's any kind of power outage or redundancy that will keep that bubble going?
Yes. It is, it's designed to exceed all the building codes, including hurricanes, wind loads, snow loads. The biggest concern is not that the snow is going to sit on there, but it actually falls to the side. It's an operations issue, which, again, SFM is completely aware of, that we've actually, the buildings are set apart 25 or 30 feet from the dome to the building. And why we do that is, so if there is a large snowfall, it does cascade down and fall between the two buildings, where it does have to be removed. So it has to be enough room to do that. Because what we're really worried about is the snow pushing up against the bubble and collapsing it that way. So that is an operations issue more than the code issue.
And you're aware of similar facilities in harsher climates such as Chicago with higher winds and more snow that successfully winter and deal with storms without a problem?
Yes.
Anyone else?
Oh,
Questions?
You had,
Ken?
I didn't finish your second
Okay.
question, which was about redundancy.
Right.
Yeah, so there are small emergency backup generators, gas-fired, natural gas on each bubble, so that it doesn't deflate.
Okay, good. Fantastic.
Yeah, you mentioned, I guess the main entrance is going to be the primary way to get into the building?
Correct.
Now, to the left there, is that another entrance, or is there any other entrance that will be used?
There's many emergency entrances. This one is for the patio out from the cafe. It's probably mostly for people coming out to have a snack, but it's not really an entrance for the public.
Okay, so people may park on both sides or all around the building, but they'd have to walk and go in that main entrance?
Yes. So the first part of their athletic experience is walking to the entrance. Yeah.
Okay. I guess there are fire exits and appropriate?
Correct.
around-
We do meet all the fire codes.
Okay.
Okay.
It's A15.
So I have Exhibit A15, which is, and A16, which is our signage package. And I segued in from talking about the main entrance and that sign there, and I'd like to go into a little bit of detail about signage that we're proposing. When we initially submitted the package, the signage package, we were over the signage square footage allowed, which is 40 square feet per sign. So we've decreased all of those in our submission of April 23rd. They have been brought down to comply with the square foot regulations. So the one in front at the main entrance says Apex. It's tough to read, but it sits on top of the canopy. They are internally lit with LED lights. They're under the 4 foot candles of output as required by your regs. And the palette that the designers have come up with, that are designing the signage, is what they call their Northern Lights package. And so navy blue is the color of you'll see consistently throughout when I present. It's the colors themselves, the face of the letters is navy blue. So these will be navy blue, internally lit, but they do sit on top of that canopy. And so your codes, your regulations say they do not want to see any signage on top of a canopy or a parapet or the top of a building. I think we meet the intent of that regulation, but I think it's meant more for like you're trying to avoid a retail situation where it's on top of the building. These are 12 feet below the actual top of the parapet. So I think we meet what you're trying to accomplish. They do sit on top of a canopy. We tried putting them below. We had to raise up the canopy, got in the window's way. It just didn't work. But we think we meet the intention, the spirit of what you were trying to accomplish with that regulation. Moving on to the main entrance of the facility, we're proposing A15. We're proposing this type of signage. We're asking for a waiver to have 2 of these signs because we do have 2 entrances to the facility. We're going to have a lot of people from the area coming here for the first, second, third time. And we really request that the 2 entrances have a sign saying, you made it, you're here. So, again, Apex Sports and Events, we've decreased this to the permitted 40 square feet surface area. It was larger in the first go-around. We've, on the bottom, we have a base of split-face block, color to match, block to match, and color what we have at the building. Try and tie it in, again, per your regulations.
And we'll provide landscaping around those signs to the satisfaction of the board's professionals?
Yes, exactly. So, and then this sign, again, the navy blue lights, it's a white aluminum background, composite board background. The top here is an arch, of AZAC trim, and then we have embedded in it, recessed in it, again, a linear LED lights, which will shine down on the sign, again, below the 4-foot candles regulation. Again, so we're asking for 2 of those. And then we have Exhibit A16, which is our directional signage, on-site directional signage. So, can you see it if I keep it over here? Yeah. So these, we believe, also meet the regulations. They are, none of them are larger than 2 square feet per, 2 square feet for the surface area. Again, they're going to match the same colors as the our other signage, and there's no advertisements on the signs. They're purely for navigation, but we do need them. It's a large site, and there's a lot of fields, so we do request that we have the signage as laid out here.
Can you explain what the color ice is?
Ice is it's a word for light gray, I think. So. Okay, so that's the signage. If I can revert back to the building, so there's something Mr. Maskey pointed out in his comments was to confirm the heights of the building. There's 2 different types of heights. There's the overall height, and there's the average height. So the overall height is the highest point is right here. Now that's not of the domes. The domes are under a different category. But the overall height is 48 feet 6 inches. Your regs allow 50 feet. The average height is taken by the very highest point, adding to it the lowest vertical roof line, and then dividing by 2, and that's how you get your average height. And you're allowed 40 feet high, and this comes in at 31 foot 6 inches high, so it's well below your regulation. So we talked about height, we talked about signage, and we talked about the building appearance. The last subject, which is found in a couple spots of your regulations, are the mechanical units. Mechanical units being heating and air conditioning units. We have 2 types. We have ground mounted and we have roof mounted. So the roof mounted are in the front 2 boxes of buildings. They heat and cool this glass dome and then this large structure with the single roof. I'm referring to A9 exhibit. So then the roof units, there's 9 units on the roof. They are all a minimum of 22 feet back from the entrance. We have a parapet. They will never be visible by anyone, which is a part of your regulations. The other units are located.
Do you want to use one of the previous exhibits?
That'd be great.
We have.
The other units.
If you could just refer to which exhibit you
It is A2, dated 4/5. So we talked about the units up front that are on the roof, hidden from view. The remaining, there's 7 units that are on the ground behind the main structure, hard structure, between that and the smaller inflatable dome. They, except for the very end one, I'm confident are out of view, and I believe we're going to have to screen that last one with the solid vinyl screening. I don't know if it's just going north to south, or we do have to turn it, and I think we just have to, once we're building it, determine just how much screening is going to need on that particular unit, because it is probably 20, 25 feet off that corner. The other units are for the domes themselves, and they are on the north side of both structures, and they will also be screened from view. They are on the ground. They also will, the screening will have acoustical lining on that screening. And why are we doing that? As a precaution, but we did do a study on the noise, and the reason we studied them all, but we studied the noise coming off of these two units because they're the closest we could find to neighborhood, and they are well within the allowable decibels at the property line.
Not even close, right?
Not even close.
Can you define not even close?
So the regs are at night are 50 decibels, I believe, 10 to 7.
Just to be clear, that's at the nearest residential property line. From 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. is 50 decibels, and the nearest residential property line, as Mr. Decker testified to, was at least 50 to 100 feet beyond the edge of this property line. And then the local and state noise ordinances, which match because there's the state requires municipalities to use the sample noise ordinance, have 65 decibels between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. at the receiving residential property line, which is, again, well over 250 feet from these. So if you want to say what you found at the property line of Apex.
We only measured sound, or did the measurements from our property line. So the loudest one we could find is 46 decibels, and the other ones, I think the next one was 31 decibels. Just to put it, 30 decibels is a whisper. 40 decibels is what you sound here in a library. 50 to 65 decibels is a normal conversation. So I think I addressed everything in the memo and as much architecture as you probably want to hear about.
Mr. White, you're good? Mr. Maskey?
Good, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from the dais, board? So just to be clear, because I'm sorry, when you were speaking, you weren't speaking very loudly into the microphone again. The regulation at the property line is what?
Well, it's at this property line, it's actually 65.
65
all day
decibels.
around because the property line borders a commercial property.
Right.
But at the nearest receiving residential property line pursuant to both your ordinance and the state noise code, it is 50 decibels from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. and then 65 decibels in the other hours.
Okay, just so they could hear in the back. All right, so we'll make a motion for public on this.
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, so any questions at all based on all the testimony that the architect, Mr. Clark, gave on the building structure, the sound, the signs, and the materials that were just testified to? Anybody on the left first? Nobody? Anybody on the right? Okay. Please come up. You keep that microphone, Mr. Clark. Use that one. Please state your name, spell your last name.
Robert Darby, D-A-R-B-Y, 51 Oxford. You made mention that there was going to be a backup standby generator. How big? And is that going to be located next to the air handling units?
Yes, there'll be the smaller size. I didn't size it, but probably 75 kW. And they're not for noise. You're asking maybe?
Yeah, basically.
So they're exempt, I believe, from the code. But I will say they only come on once a week for 10 minutes, and that's just to run them, and that's automatic, and you can choose Tuesday at 10 o'clock. And the only time they really come on is when there's an emergency and there's bigger things to worry about than that noise. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions? Public? Okay. I guess motion to close public?
So
No, not
moved.
yet. Not yet, sorry. Any other witnesses that you have to bring up?
No.
Thank you.
No other
Thank you.
witnesses.
Anybody from the public who wishes to talk about?
Okay, right. Now that we've had all the witnesses brought up, this is your time to ask any questions of any testimony that is given over the past 3 meetings, and/or any other comment or questions you may have concerned about the project in general. So I'll start on the left. Any comments or questions? Okay. Please, again, state your name, spell your last.
Good evening, my name is Doug Schaff, 79 Oxford. I don't think I heard testimony about the environmental factors. What happens when you clear all those trees out?
We provided an environmental impact statement. We believe that complies, and that the site plan ordinance does not require separate environmental testimony for that.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
We provide an environmental impact statement, and the site plan ordinance does not require separate testimony on the impact of clearing out trees beyond what we showed with the tree replacement plan.
When do you plan on start cutting down the trees?
We'll comply with whatever the DEP permit states, but I would note that the environmental impact statement and the Environmental Commission both confirmed that there's no presence of threatened or endangered species, and Fish and Wildlife confirmed that as well, pursuant to the Environmental Commission letter.
I'm sorry, I really don't hear well. What date was it?
It will comply with the DEP's permit. It will comply with the DEP's permit if they put any dates on.
The reason I ask, I think
The question, Mr. Fisher, was when do you plan on starting cutting trees down?
I believe Mr. Wilkie said previously in testimony, as soon as if this board does approve this application, as soon as he receives all the necessary approvals to go forward and do it.
the reason I ask that is my understanding that according to, I guess, the Fish and Wildlife guidelines, there should be no cutting of trees of a certain size between April and October, November.
We'll follow the Fish and Wildlife permit. If there is a permit, if there is a restriction, it'll be on the DEP permit, and the applicant will follow that.
So you follow that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the left? Anyone on the right? This is your chance. Okay? Motion to close public?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
So moved. Or second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, if Mr. Fisher would like to wrap it in a bow?
Thank you for your time, and I will be brief. I need one of these microphones that,
Maybe once you try the
attached to me.
handheld one, might be easier.
Let's see what that one was.
How about that?
Oh, yeah, there
that's
you go.
great.
Rockstar.
Apex has presented a thoughtfully and carefully designed and engineered application for a much-needed sports and recreation facility in the township. It's a permitted use in the redevelopment area, complies with the redevelopment plan, and requires only a few de minimis waivers. It's being developed by a passionate local community member and will be run by an experienced team of experts. The applicant has gone above and beyond to try to limit the impact on nearby residential areas, even though as a permitted use, they're not required to do everything that they've offered to do. As you've heard, the proposed sports and recreation facility provides a multitude of benefits for the community, and I urge support to grant this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. David, any comment?
Yeah, just for a couple of clarifications before we go forward. There was a lot of discussion about the methods of remediation at the back line. Just so we're clear, if memory serves me well, it was left that the soil towards the rear would not be removed so that the existing stand of trees could remain. Is that correct?
That's correct. At the recommendation of the Environmental Commission, that was left so that there would be, I believe, it was testified 76 mature trees would be saved there.
Okay, and that area would be totally fenced?
That's correct, pursuant as a engineering control.
Okay, and there was some testimony about how far that fence, not for the contamination, but perhaps how far that fence would extend along the back property line.
I believe it was along the entire back property line.
Could you define entire back, because there's several backs there?
I mean, if you'd like me to point it out, or I guess because the case is closed, I have to point it out for you on the exhibit?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's actually shown in red on Exhibit A7. And if you could just hold it up. It goes along the northern property line.
Okay, what type of fence is it?
It will be a solid vinyl fence.
Color?
I believe one of the conditions was that we provide to the board professional satisfaction
Okay.
the color.
Not quite.
Reasonable satisfaction.
That's my only questions. If unless the board has more questions, I would just like to review the waivers.
Charlie?
I would also note that there was a proffer from the applicant to provide up to 100 6 to 8 foot trees, evergreens on the neighboring properties on Oxford, which we would do to the board professional satisfaction as well.
Wait. So those are trees that you're planting on the people's properties?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so if the board decides to go forward, there are no variances involved with this application. However, there are a few waivers, design waivers basically. One is for the size of the parking spaces and the width of the aisles. Another is actually a submission waiver, waiving the community impact statement. There is one sign waiver, that's just to permit 2 freestanding signs instead of 1.
The tree mitigation.
There's an economic hardship waiver on the tree mitigation. They're allowed to cap it at 1.5% of the total site improvement costs, which is what they're requesting. It results in the replacement of 557 trees and a contribution to the Township's tree fund for an additional 8 trees. So that's another waiver.
We were not sure if there was a waiver required for exterior or materials, section F6A of the redevelopment plan. Technically, they may be classified as prefabricated steel panels as part of the building, so we provided testimony as to that.
Okay, can I have that one?
And also,
That-
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I also want to note that it is actually a phased approval requesting, but the second phase is very small, one of the smallest I've seen, which is converting the northernmost field from grass to turf. The rest of it is phase 1.
And just finally, so everybody understands, there is a 2.5% affordable housing fee on this project.
That's right. We'll comply with the required affordable housing fee.
Okay, that's it.
Mr. White, anything? We talked to David about my notes here, the fence inspection around the LSRP area that was being inspected semi-annually. Is that done by the LSRP or by the township, or both?
That's, I believe that's arranged by the owner of the property.
Okay.
As part of their engineering controls from the DEP.
Okay. And then we're maintaining the hours of operation from 8 to 11, Monday to Friday, 7 days a week. And then the lights, we've talked about that they would turn them off when they're not using the last field as a priority. That I believe was testified that they would
Right,
comply with
at the
that.
first, the southernmost 2 fields would be priority, and the
Right.
last one would be as the third one in line. So,
Right.
Just for the hours to clarify, outdoor.
Outdoor.
8 to 11. Indoor, the standard hours should be 8 to 11, but we would hope the board would allow the other community events during other hours.
Okay. Anything else from anyone?
You just have like DRCC, all the other approvals as they come in.
Correct.
Right,
We have most of them already, but yes.
okay.
Okay.
LOIs, right?
And it's preliminary and final major site plan that we're seeking.
Okay.
That's it, thanks.
Okay. I'll just say thank you to you and Mr. Wilkie and his team for, I think, being very understanding and giving the public every chance to make their concerns noted, and also what you attempted to do and being a good neighbor, which I I think that he's demonstrated that he's here to be a good neighbor, and that the project is in his field and that it is beneficial to all, and he wants everyone to enjoy it, and is willing to keep everybody's intentions within reason and try and be that good neighbor. It's obviously within the parameters and zoning to have this here, but he still was, I felt, able and willing to listen and meet with people publicly and privately. So I thank Mr. Wilkie and his team for doing that. So at this time, I would enter a motion for approval as stated with the conditions that were stated earlier.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Scoba. We have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
All right, we have a second. And a roll call, please.
Forrest?
Yes.
Hashtag?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes, I'd just like to thank Mr. Wilkie for meeting with the residents, having sat on the planning board for many years. I think he went above and beyond, kind of tagging on what Sean had mentioned, so I vote in the affirmative, yes.
Mr. Scoba?
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair LaPlante?
Yes, and thank you very much and congratulations. We look forward to a wonderful project.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a little bit of bookkeeping here. Our next scheduled meeting is a business meeting, May 24th, 2018. We still need to have that, David?
We have nothing on right now.
So we'll just keep that open for now, or do you, all right, we'll keep that open for now. I'm going to take a minute.
For discussion. It's business meeting number 24. Mr. Bernstein is discussing whether we need to leave.
Have a cookie.
All right,
We're going to leave it open for now.
we'll notify you if it gets canceled.
And then we have our scheduled meeting for June 7th still? Okay. I'll just take this note that we are going to lose one of our members. She's moving out of town, Stephanie Forrest. So I'd like to thank her on behalf of the board for her time here and input. It can be hard to replace you. Hopefully it'll be a Jet fan, not a Patriot fan. But thank you for your service to Hillsborough, and good luck with everything you do.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll take a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
And second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned at 8:45.